special meeting of the Leominster Conservation Commission for September 4th, 2019. Our first hearing is pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended. There'll be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent for the City of Leominster. There's a general right-of-way maintenance, low-impact activities to proceed under the Agent and Conservation Commission supervision for 3 years on the right-of-way and easements, address City of Leominster, DEP 199-1093.
Hi.
Someone represent the applicant.
Yeah. I'm Mark Primarini, Assistant Director of DPW. This is something we do every 3 years, but it's been lapsed since I've been there. It was last done by the last agent with Apple Point. It's really just a re-up of it. Again, it's for our general sweeping, vegetation cutting, drainage replacement. If the catch basin needs to be fixed or collapsed, we fix it. If there's a roadway, riprap, swale, or ditch that we clean it out. Basin, mason. We try and get basins. Last year we did one basin. Clean out, get all the trees out. We did it at the end of Christine Street on the left. It's an Avon Street basin. Clean that one. So anything like that. But obviously we work through Angie. Even the culverts, same way. That's approximate.
I guess my first question is, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's exempt under the DPW, obviously. So I guess maybe Angela, you can answer this, or someone more knowledgeable. If it's not under an exempt condition, you obviously have an emergency if something collapses.
Yep.
Anything else should be a planned project. Why would the city not just come to us at that point with an NOI?
Well, we would, because that's why on this list we work with Angie on anything. So if there's something that she says you need a plan for, we would do a plan for it.
Okay.
Which is what they've done, with the Willard Street and with
Well, you're right, and that's what I'm saying. This is kind of a blanket, when I started on the agenda and came up at the last meeting, just thinking if it's not an emergency and it's not exempt, it's a special project. So at that point, what does this cover that is not exempt, I guess, is,
Well, if anything, like you say, if it's not an emergency, if it's in the 100-foot buffer zone, like let's say we have a culvert we want to fix, we have to do a plan, come before you, like we have on Litchfield Street, which we're doing that one. The Willard Tree ones, I know they weren't design plans. I sketched them, but that's because we got grant money and we had to hurry up and get those in. But everything else we usually do an NOI. The only times if it collapses, like Page, we had a collapse, which we did. Unless it's an emergency, we're going to come to Angie do an NOI.
Just in the past, we had a plan. Basically, the DPW would come in a bunch of times to for maintenance of a failed detention basin, or there was a few different things, and there was also some things going on that weren't done necessarily to to the way that we would have liked it. So we got together with the DPW and said, when you're doing these things, even if they are exempt, there's a document on file that says, when you're working, to clean a detention basin, these are your BMPs that you have to follow. And that would be sort of everybody in DPW kind of had a copy of that. And like when, supposedly the way it worked was, when the guy went out to do the job, he kind of would, it would be someone who was understanding of what the BMPs were. It wasn't meant to be we have a project that needs, a culvert that needs to be actually replaced or repaired. It was more, we're doing general maintenance within the city, even if it was exempt. It was just a document to make sure that the city workers knew exactly what was expected of them. So there was a document that they could reference. Like at work, we used like everything is validated, and there's basically a document that everyone has to follow when they do a job.
Kind of an SOP
type
thing.
So it was designed to be something like that. It wasn't designed to be
like an O&M plan? Or?
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. And when I spoke to Judy at the state, she said she has a lot of towns submitting these and kind of using them, like Larry said. Because I'd asked her, I think someone else brought up a question as to why we didn't, or the city didn't notify all the abutters, which would be the entire city. And she said, well, typically it's more of just a kind of to have on hand to kind of create a better relationship between DPW and conservation.
Okay.
We have a pretty great relationship.
So are those documents on file, or does the city have any type of OMP for maintenance work, like just the standard?
That's kind of part of like our MS4 permit that we have.
Okay.
But we also we have, that's what the order of conditions would be, so that, for example, if a foreman went out there to go clean something out, for example, Christine, they had sent a form, they contacted me, I went out, walked with the foreman, said, be careful right here, don't leave all the stumps. I went over everything with them so that they were aware, because there is a wetland over there. So.
I mean, we'd have to go by the DEP, P&Ps anyway,
Right.
the manual.
Now, with this goes, what kind of, I mean, obviously it's a NOI, so this order of conditions, what, is it kind of standard boilerplate stuff? I mean, it's all handed to DPW, and how does that?
Yeah, so it'd be, I believe in the past it was just a file we both kept in our own offices. Each of us had a copy, and then, for example, when someone to go clean out a swale, they'd be like, hey, just so you know, we have an order of conditions. You need to contact Angie, walk the site with her before you do it, give her a call.
So if it needs erosion control, they have to contact,
Yeah.
that's all standard order conditioners,
Yeah.
boilerplate stuff that,
And some stuff wouldn't need erosion controls, like if there's a wetland 50 feet away and they're just cutting trees out to get to a sewer line.
right,
But they kind of leave that up to my discretion.
right, but there still should be, you're still mandated to
Correct.
Yeah,
contact
there's
you
still,
to, to say, hey,
Yeah,
we're
anytime
gonna
we're-
cut down trees in 2 days from now. Someone, meaning yourself, needs to go up there and say, yes, you do need some, or no, I think we're all set.
Yeah.
Anytime within 100 feet, we
Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
So, Mark, speaking as somebody who shares a lot of your same responsibilities, I certainly feel your pain in day-to-day operations. You weren't here at the last meeting when I spoke about this, but my own opinion, and having worked with the Wetlands Protection Act for over 20 years and also Public Works, this really isn't, a blanket order condition really isn't the way to cover your daily operations. And it's actually not really permittable because we're not, the first step of getting order conditions is meeting the public hearing requirements under the Act. Without having a butters list, knowing your project locus, you're missing that step from right at the beginning. I think I used the analogy last meeting that this is kind of like asking for a blanket application if you were a builder in town wanting to develop residential property, come to the commission. I don't know where I'm going to be building tomorrow, but if a lot opens up and I need to put in a foundation, I'm going to go work with the agent and make sure everything's okay, and having something blanket to cover that. As the chair mentioned, there's plenty of activities that are exempt. I read through your application. A lot of that you probably wouldn't need to come to the commission for. It's not that it's exempt to DPWs. I think we talked about this last month. It's really not DPW exempt, but it's activity exempt.
Right.
And it's activity that is very common for DPWs or utility companies, for instance. That's really why a lot of those exemptions were made. The commission's worked well with DPW in the past. If you've had a collapse, you had the retaining wall collapse down the street in the brook. You need emergency certificates. We've done those when needed. RDAs can always be filed, or if you're exempt, and frankly, I'd be the first person to want to tell you that because I don't want to see you coming in here 100 times. So, but I just don't think that a blanket order of condition is something that's really feasible or something that's even permittable. I know one person at the department has a different opinion on that, but I can also tell you from working in the department, depends on who you talk to. I get asked this question from 3 or 4 towns every year, how they handle that, and is that the approach to do it. We've always stayed away from it because we don't think it's legal, quite frankly. And also the communities that I've worked with, we're really willing to work with public works departments. I mean, you know where I've been. I'm on different boards with 30 different communities, and we talk public works all the time. There's a lot in there that you really don't need to come for us. And if you do have something like Hill Street, or was it Litchfield was the other culvert? We really need to see the specifics of the site, get it permitted, get it conditioned, follow up on it if there's any resource area alterations or flood zone or things like that that we need as-bills for. But to have a blanket thing, I just don't think that's the approach that I'd want to see. And I'd rather see you do your, you talked about detention basin cleaning, lining some swales. Detention ponds, depending on the date, most of the ones that have been done in the past few decades are exempt for stormwater maintenance anyway. So you go back to that date in the act, off the top of my head I can't tell you, but it's there, and you make sure that you maintain and everything constructed after that. I think that if you work closely with our agent, and then if there's any questions beyond that, come to us. I think most of that stuff you want to do in your application, you can without even having to come say hello. That's just my opinion on it.
We have done this every 3 years or 4 years, whatever it's been, like since last, so that's, we decided to submit it. I mean, if you don't feel we need it, then it's up to the commission.
Yeah, we were kind of treating it more like, how like the utility companies, every 3 years they send you that booklet that has their right-of-way access and their management plan to maintain vegetation around power lines and railroad tracks. So it's sort of something like that we were trying to establish, so that there was a document on file that basically said how the city would be.
So in that scenario, we're not issuing anything to them permit-wise. They're basically telling us
what they're going to
here, we're exempt per this section of 310 CMR or 131 Chapter 40. It's
yeah, that's true. Yeah, so maybe that's the avenue to go, is just have that document on file so that we have it as a reference, you have it as a reference.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work with the utility companies too, because obviously, like, National Grid doesn't want to file an NOI for everything they do. But I think the difference is the OMP plan that like Eversource, National Grid have, that's something that they've gotten approved through DEP as well, so that DEP has no issues. They still send them a map of what they're gonna do, and they have a copy of the OMP plan on file, and everything that they've agreed, they don't need to come in and do NOIs for. I think that would be great to have, because then, you're getting the permits for the things you actually really need permits for, but there's also a file that says, these different things that you're doing in the next year are exempt, this is why, and this is all the stuff, the BMPs and stuff that we're gonna follow. And then when something comes up where you're, replacing a culvert can have a significant impact, just coming in with an NOI for that, I think, would probably make everyone's life a little easier.
Do you have a comment or a question?
My concern was the wording on the notice of intent, if indeed the wording is the same as what we have here posted for the public hearing. It says general right-of-way maintenance and low-impact activities. Those are two very vague statements. I mean, it would almost authorize doing pretty much anything. And I think that's the issue that I felt at the last meeting. It was kind of just given a green light. Obviously, Angie would be there to say yay or nay, but she represents us, and I think it's not good grammar. I think us should see it first.
You're talking about permittable things, though.
Exactly. But, and I understand too, the emergency situations and right-of-way situations, but it can very easily get carried away. All of a sudden, let's just go ahead and get this done. Because I've seen that in the past too, and I was chairing the commission in Clinton.
So the way I wrote it in the public hearing was a little bit different. It was in the NOI, so I just took the blurb that was actually on the NOI form instead of, because Mr. Pieraini had put in, it's pretty detailed, a couple pages of, what the different work entailed. And I would include that in the order of conditions if that's the route the commission goes. But if the commission feels that, DPW has a pretty good relationship with us, that we can just communicate as necessary and then file as necessary, I'm sure that's fine too.
Fine with us.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, but if there is a document that you use, if we just,
Yeah.
get a copy of that, and that way if anybody has any concerns about what your investment, you know, your BMPs are, maybe, you know, it doesn't have to be a hearing process, we could just
have.
through email,
I
have a
gotcha.
conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the route I would prefer, because I understand his point about the legality of it. Just in case you were to do something and it's next to somebody's house and they say, hey, DPW is here, I never got a notice that they were doing anything, it's better to make sure that you guys are covered. And that if you do file something, that the area that you're working in, people at least get notified. I think I understand not wanting to notify the whole city about, like, hey, we're probably going to do this at some point
In the road.
in the next 3 years.
Okay.
So I think that's personally the approach that I would like to take, is just work with Angie when you need to. She'll tell you if what you're doing is exempt. If it's not and you need to file, just, you know, file for what you want.
Anybody else in the audience like to speak on this NOI? Second time and final time. Any objection to closing the public hearing? All right, I declare the public hearing closed. Do I have a motion to either issue or not to issue any orders of conditions on this proposed NOI for 199-1093?
I'll make a motion to not issue order of conditions for DP file number 199-1093, and just ask that we have a document on file.
Do I have a second on that motion?
Yeah, I would just add to that, that just the city work with our agent whenever, you know, just notify her whenever you're gonna do something, and just file as needed for any big projects that are not exempt.
All in favor of that motion and that second?
We have some more discussion.
Oh, yeah.
If we're gonna, it sounds like what we're entertaining is denying the issuance of order conditions. So you want to be specific why, not just what you're asking for. So if that's one of the reasons, one of the things that you feel is lacking, that's fine. But, you know, things I would add to this is the public hearing requirements, not notifying the butters, not having a specific project locus, for instance.
Okay.
So it's the application's lacking the specifics in terms of activity, location, and the failure to notify butters. I think at a minimum we should explain why we're denying it, so that when it gets to DEP, they can look at, okay, this is what happens.
Okay. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Oh,
Is that you that seconded it? Yes.
yeah. Next hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended to be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent for Michael Galasso from Central District Realty. Sorry, I forgot my glasses tonight. Prepared by A+ Construction Services Corp. for the construction of a 2-office maintenance building on an existing contracted yard site. The project is within 200 feet of riparian zone of a river. It contains floodplain buffer zone on the property, address 133 Nashua Street, map 379, parcel 5. Is there someone representing the applicant?
My name is Joe Danubio.
You can actually put it up on the board there.
I'm the civil engineer from A+ Construction Services Corporation. As you said, representing Central District Realty for the site at 133 Nashua Street. Do you want green cards or? So we did notify the abutters, and I will say we got 7 out of 8 back. A notice of intent was filed for the project and a lot of other paperwork. I'm just going to give a brief summary of the site plan here. I'm actually going to start with the existing conditions plan. So this is the boundary of the site. And I will say Mark Arnold is here from Goddard Consulting. They did the wetland flagging for the riverfront area. And he'll talk more about the buffer zones and the environmental regulatory impact. I'm just going to focus on the engineering aspect of it. So this is the existing site. It's basically currently used as a contractor yard and has been for probably 30-something or more years. Basically, there's construction, barrier, equipment, other material on the site. It's pretty simple, actually.
Where's it located on Nashua Street?
It's 133 Nashua.
Across from Buzzin Drive.
I think it's like a Dion, and I don't know if it's still DE or Dion Enver.
Okay. I'm not a local, so I'm not
Ah.
as familiar with
That's right.
things as you are. And there is, so most of the site is just bare soil. It is degraded. There's some patchy vegetated areas here or there, but nothing consistent. There is some small bituminous areas that was part of the driveway at one point, I believe, and it's kind of been broken up and fallen apart, so it's not really that consistent.
Yeah, there was a house back there that they demoed.
On the site?
Yeah, there were two, I used to live there actually as a kid.
Well,
With their houses.
well, you know more about this.
But
than I do.
there was, in that back corner, there was a house that was still standing
Yeah.
for a long time that they demoed back about when I first got on the commission, maybe like 12 years ago,
Oh,
about
really?
14 years ago.
So yeah, I did not. We actually looked at some Google, and we probably have those in the wetlands regulatory report, images of what it looked like back in the day. So it did show a few differences, but it was still being used as
Yeah.
a similar in a similar fashion for similar use. Of other note, the property. There's two separate properties here. Consequently, the applicant does have an affiliation with the two neighboring properties, and they do own that maintenance building as well. They did purchase this parcel not too long ago, so they do own the property that is adjacent to the river. So now I'm just going to discuss the proposed site improvements. So as was stated earlier, there are two maintenance office buildings proposed. I don't think it was in the notes there, but there is a third building, a storage building, which the contractor would like to use to store their materials and just more or less have it more organized and less scattered than it would be currently. And they are proposing it to be a contractor yard as well, same use. There's sewer, water connections to each of the buildings, electric, telecom, other utilities. We met the parking requirements. I know that's not your board's issue, but we did do that. And as far as erosion controls, we're just proposing perimeter erosion controls around the area of the work. Also a stabilized construction entrance, so vehicles coming off and on and off the site don't track the sediment onto Nashua Street. We did have a few site visits with the conservation agent, and while we were out there, we discussed some improvements that we could do for the site that would be beneficial to the buffer zone area. The first thing we discussed was there were two areas over here that were, the first one had some gravel and some other deposits. It was actually a very criminal, culpatory thing because the bucket was sitting right over, so you kind of knew a little bit had been done recently. So we also, that was at our first visit. The second time we went, there was another disturbance that had not even occurred in a 2-week period, so we said, all right, this is actually more of a problem than we thought it was, so basically the soil was all, it was probably a excavator that just tractioned it up, did some damage to a tree in this area over here. So what we've proposed is to, I gotta remember the mix that we proposed, but we want to stabilize it with a New England Province riparian mix, which we thought would be very beneficial. And also that slope is very, very steep. It's probably 60 to 70%, very vulnerable to erosion. So we thought it would be in the best interest to repair that area to prevent any future damage. Also to prevent any future activity like that, maybe not prevent it, but discourage it. We're proposing a concrete barrier all along the length of the slope, so that, if they did have an excavator or a heavy vehicle in that area, it would promote them from not going too far into the slope. There is actually some existing barrier over here along that other property, so that's what kind of gave us the idea to continue that and as a prohibitive measure. And we did propose some do not dump signs as well, just so to create awareness that that activity is not encouraged. The third thing that we agreed to was there was various debris along the slopes. I think there was a window frame, it might have been from that old house up. Some tires, I don't know, there might have been some pipe or sign posts. It wasn't a lot, but there was some, so we agreed that that would be, the client the owner would clean that up. And probably, basically, since that slope's so steep, probably have to, I don't know, tie some ropes down and drag it up so they didn't, you couldn't get equipment down there to do it because it would be very damaging and make that slope extremely vulnerable to erosion and probably collapse in some areas. I'm going to go into stormwater right now, stormwater management. We did submit a stormwater report. The mitigation we're proposing, this is a redevelopment, and as you all are probably aware, the stormwater policy requires that you meet it to the maximum extent practical. We were able actually to meet all the standards, so we did. And all the calculations and supporting documentation in the report. So we're basically proposing that we collect all the runoff from the proposed buildings and transport it to this underground detention and filtration system. It meets, it reduces the peak runoffs for the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year storm. I did meet with John Roseberry out there on site. He witnessed the perk test that we did, the test holes. I think from an engineering standpoint, that's all I have to present. I don't know if you want maybe Mark to come up and then we could address some questions from the commission after that.
So Mark Round again here with Garner Consulting. So just to review again, the regulatory, what we have is that we have basically mean annual high water at the base with, if anything, by fringe BVW, if anything, on the edge, which is basically we flagged as high as where we thought it was going to be, creating your 100-foot buffer zone, which is also basically your inner riparian zone buffer, and then your 200-foot buffer zone here. So as Joe mentioned, you have a 60% slope along here, very, very steep, well vegetated with trees, and appears to be fairly stable as long as there's controls put up top to maintain that vegetation. From our review, we have a photo back from '95, which I think does actually show the house a little bit back here, showing that this area has been an active construction yard for the last 20 plus years, so it's grandfathered in prior to the Riverfront Act in respect to the amount of development that can be within the riparian zone, in the sense of having existing conditions can be maintained in their conditions following redevelopment standards under 1050 AG. So The project again is redeveloping existing gravel yard across the whole thing. Again, there's fringe grass growing in places where the equipment hasn't been parked the last 2 weeks or a month or so, but it's constantly shifting around the site. You have basically gravel across the whole site there. So the owner's basically primarily just focusing on keeping the similar gravel surface, but he's having the buildings put up and then having all that water infiltrated into the system to mitigate that, which mitigates the peak flows, which I think is critical considering that we have a slope here. The velocity, the biggest issue with erosion is velocity of runoff. So reducing the peak flows from all the 210, 50, and 100-year storms are a significant improvement. So when we walked the site, I walked the site with the agent and Joe. We did review the area, so there's definitely a lot of debris along the edge. It's easy to remove. It's all on the surface. It can be grabbed by hand, and that's the goal, is to remove it all by hand and pull it up. That way there's no equipment nearby to do that. The disturbances along the edge, we want to get those restored because they're right at the top of the slope. Make sure those are stabilized, and then, as Joe mentioned, put that berm across the top to basically provide a permanent barrier that basically doesn't allow for plowing of snow, for example, down the slope. It doesn't allow for debris to get pushed over
That's actually
equipment along the
concrete
edge.
barrier, not a berm.
Yeah, it's a
There
concrete.
is an existing berm
It's
there.
concrete area. You have a detail in your plans that
I do, yeah, you wanna.
Yeah, if you're gonna grab it, just so we can. I just want to show the commission that we're.
This is kind of a, I will say this is a very, in construction, we call these things standard details for.
They're Jersey barriers, so it's 2 feet 8 inches tall. It's got a wide, I'm not sure how wide the wide is, it's going to be about 1.5 foot wide base. So it's a fairly large piece of concrete that's a wall form along the whole back. It basically is going to provide a very strong barrier versus anything that a earth equipment in a contractor yard would want to like roll. For example, like boulders. Those are a little easier to roll just to give it a nudge and it's going to roll down the hill. So this creates a more solid barrier across the whole thing. And it's a nice interface in terms of, in this situation when you have that kind of activity, to have a continuous barrier, which we are basically adding to what's already there to ensure that that disturbance doesn't occur.
Is it going to be continuous barrier? Is it going to be spaces for water? Is it going to be...
The goal is for it to be continuous. We didn't see any signs of erosion. It's a gravel area that appears to perk pretty well. The perk rates were fine for the
Like
infiltration
6
system.
inches.
6 inches an hour. So there, you've got some pretty good percolation already in the slope. So to really just allow the water to kind of sit on the site itself and infiltrate versus runoff. There are some weep holes put, but they're usually very high in the Jersey barriers if there are any. So we don't anticipate that. There's going to be some hair cracks between sections, but you don't want to leave enough space for anything to really be pushed through, which was my first concern when I saw the site. Was like, we have to do something about protecting the top of the slope, and that would be a massive improvement to this whole area.
And I'm just gonna add one thing. Currently, there is a berm there, so.
There is a berm of earth, but having a berm of earth with earth equipment nearby is a lot easier to move and pile on top of versus having an actual Jersey barrier with the signage along the top. And this project also will provide the commission record of what the site was, definitions in the sense of any other activities. The commission can definitely know that if something goes beyond the Jersey barrier, it was not permitted, and it's very easy for them to define that in the future. So from a regulatory standpoint, where the only activities within the inner riparian zone or the buffer zone is strictly adding in that Jersey barrier along the existing disturbance line, and then loaming and seeding those disturbed areas right at the top of the slope to ensure that those are not eroded. So those are the activities within the buffer zone and inner riparian zone. So inner riparian zone is going to be, again, redevelopment and restoration, which is allowed because it's previously disturbed already. And any restoration mitigation work is always focused on it primarily closer to the river when it comes to activities. The redevelopment up in the riparian zone's outer is this corner of the building right here, and then you have the infiltration system that's going underneath the gravel parking lot here. So we have existing gravel, which under redevelopment standards for riverfront areas is 1-to-1 degraded. You meet the performance standards for riverfront for those areas there. And on top of that, we've shifted the buildings. We've kept this building, out these two buildings out of the riverfront area and this corner here. So we've focused on keeping development of buildings outside the riverfront area as well, just to again focus on moving stuff further from the riparian zone whenever we can, rather than located in the back here, which you could in the sense of you're doing one-to-one degraded information, but from alternatives analysis, you want to focus on pushing them further away. So they've given themselves enough space between the buildings to function for parking, turning around here, and then enough for access into these buildings here. So that was the analysis when we looked at this instance of riverfront areas. It's one-to-one mitigation. We've got improvements from the stormwater system here, and then we also have the improvements of the permanent barrier, the restoration, ensuring that nothing else occurs on the site.
The restoration area is on the slope or on top of the slope?
It's on top of the slope. I mean, there's a little bit on the fringe just of the top lip. I would say it might be only first 2 or 3 feet down. That's just it. So it's basically right along the edge. So it's really minor.
Restoration should be okay, easy.
Yes, it should be. We have direct access to it, so we can install the erosion control around it, and to make sure that it stabilizes before that. But it's basically it's very reachable from anything. There's nothing in the way that they can easily walk through that.
I would say that's actually right on the top, and the other one's a little bit on the fringe. So this one's pretty flat.
Yeah,
Because they actually did it with the equipment, so if they were on the fringe, they probably would have been on the river.
yeah, because it's such a steep slope. So it's from a regulatory standpoint, you have a significant improvement since of removing all the trash and debris from that sensitive bank area. A lot for more vegetation to grow along the riverfront area naturally because of the debris that's blocking it right now, and then providing the Jersey barrier, which will again prevent any of that trash from ever going down again, and permanently defining the limits of the development on the property, along with the improvement of the stormwater on site.
The back side of those buildings, is that the south side of the property, that you're just leaving, up there.
Back here, it's going to remain a contractor yard.
So it's just
existing
now
conditions. Yep.
gravel and that's the way it's going to
Exactly.
stay.
That's the role. That's the goal. Is just to leave it as a continual yard.
I will say I'm going to add one more note to the stormwater. There was one area drain proposed on the side of the building. There was a low point based on access to the building, so we had to.
So you got a drain here for this area.
There will be some landscape. This is the landscape plan.
So again, screening on the side for the abutter, and then also on the front, just to help meld the new development in with the rest of the street, just to kind of try to help it blend in with the rest of the street and try to screen it.
Originally, we didn't intend to do any landscape. We're advised otherwise by the mayor. And there is a row of arborvitaes in the front currently. We wanted to keep them, but again, in order for it to get the grades of that first building to work, we would have to cut 3 feet. So we decided we were going to remove those and have an alternate landscape that's proposed by the landscape architect.
Yes.
I did send out the DEP comments. Have you guys addressed those yet?
We have not addressed the mounting. There was basically 2 comments. One was about a 17.
3.
Was there 3? I know one was
The 72-hour drawdown analyst should be provided. The mounting analyst should be
alternatives.
provided with vertical separation from the bottom of the BMP to seasonal high groundwater. It's less than 4 feet, and then alternatives analyst should be provided in accordance with 310 CMR 10.584.
Can you comment on that?
So from a riverfront standard, we're under redevelopment under 1058.5G. So which states that work shall be either as close or further from the river as possible in the degraded surfaces, which it is because we have degraded surfaces that are closer to the riverfront than we currently are right now. So that standard is met. You have no net increase in impervious integrated surfaces more than existing conditions if it's prior to 96 or your 10%. So we exist prior to 96, so we comply with that standard of there's no net increase in degraded surfaces. And your any other alternatives is since we're not expanding anything that's there currently. And so you have a no build, which doesn't improve any of the site, leaves the existing conditions as is, leaves the contractor on site without any order of conditions, any record of where his disturbances are. The trash stays there, stormwater stays the same. You have the alternative of putting the buildings in the riverfront area, which he certainly could have done that. He could have built another building back here, would have met those standards. That's an alternative, it's just an expanded project. And then if you have so that's really the alternative, or you have this proposal here. So from an alternatives analysis, you have a clear, the riverfront standards, when it discusses alternatives, it actually mentions that if there's an alternative that's clearly going to impact the wetlands or worse, you don't have to even run it, because it's from a logical standpoint, it complies. So we did give you the full document. I'm not sure if DP saw and actually read the riverfront standards in the sense of the one-to-one degraded surface to degraded surface.
So if you want to have a conversation with Mr. Riquier at DEP and just have him email back that he's, his
I'm sorry,
he's
can you say that name again? Because I'm not familiar.
I have it right
Adam
here.
Riquier.
Adam Riquier.
Yeah, he's the one who sent who did the DEP analyst, and just make sure he sends back that he's complied as well. He's
Okay.
satisfied.
Okay, I wasn't sure if the commission had any comments, because typically DEP just comments and lets the commission deal with that. Usually we don't talk to DEP after they issue comments.
We try to-
We can definitely reach out to them, but usually I've never been asked to actually go to talk to DEP about
Since we have a
comments.
site visit next week anyways, and this won't be voted on tonight.
Yeah,
might
I can
just-
definitely reach out to them. So that's fine. Does the commission have any other questions on like the existing conditions, the regulatory questions of the riverfront area?
Can we go back to the Jersey barrier
Yes.
that you were describing? I couldn't see the dimensions on your map, but I have them here on my phone. Am I correct when I look at this that the barrier is 9 inches into the ground?
No, it's a 9-inch vertical.
Okay, so
On
it sits on the
It sits
ground.
on the ground, yes.
So the total height is 2 feet 8 inches.
So it's 2, well, it's, sorry,
2
I
plus
misspoke,
9.
it's 2 feet 8 inches plus 9 inches. So
Plus
you
9
have
inches.
plus
3
9 inches.
3 feet 5
So 3
inches.
feet, yeah.
It's a standard
3 feet 5 inches.
barrier that they use in highways.
Okay. I also heard you say, I think I heard you say, that you were going to extend that barrier the entire length of the slope.
Yeah, so there's an existing Jersey barrier right here that goes like this, and our proposal was to run it along this whole thing, all the way down to the property line. So that way, you don't have a berm, you don't have anything, because right now, again, you have contractor equipment storage straight up to the edge of vegetation.
Right.
With some areas not even, with some areas with berm, some areas without berm, and then you have a 60% slope just beyond that. So equipment can easily, first of all, they can back into the trees, they can they can hit the trees, they can dump material right at the top of the slope, which could slough down the slope there. All those are the likelihood possibilities of happening if you don't have a Jersey barrier there, and then also the signage. And again, it provides that barrier that if there's ever a question about activities, the commission can say, well, there was signage that was posted, there was a Jersey barrier that was placed, you have a clearly defined mark, and you can easily enforce any further disturbance, which I think is a significant ability on this property, because it's been semi-unpoliced for the last 20 years. It's just because it's been actively been used in similar conditions since then.
Okay, well, I get all of that. And I'm sure you understand that over the years, I can go back to when I was a kid, that the Nashua River has been making a very slow but steady comeback environmentally to a point where there's now a very rich area in wildlife.
Correct.
Aren't you really constructing a wildlife barrier?
Because we have completely a degraded area across this entire property. There's no natural forested areas. The only areas that get forested are across the street, where you have more commercial properties, and then you've got the MBTA train tracks.
Right.
So, and then you get across that, and you do get into some of the neighborhood forest areas. But in the sense of wildlife movement, you wouldn't expect to see much of anything moving
Really?
across this way. I mean, I would expect to see some maybe possibly going this direction here, but the movement, at least there's nothing from this area here significantly, unless you're talking hundreds of feet away.
And
from
you're
property.
thinking nothing's going to come up out of that river basin?
This is
Of that slope?
this is a 60% slope. It's 100 feet long.
Yeah.
That's up there to climb up there to that area. And therefore, I mean, you have the impact to a wildlife travel path in that direction. So, and you have steep banks on the other side too. You've got Route 2 right here
Right.
with the bridge right here.
Right.
You've got across the river here. You've got what's over here. You've got a small piece of woods. And you've got Magic Fuels. You got Dippin' Donuts up over here, up on the corner.
It's a ton of impediments.
There, and you've got the Chevrolet dealership that's right up against the river again, all on this side.
Right.
So from a standpoint of wildlife movement in this area,
It's pretty hemmed in.
it's hemmed in the sense of
So-
whereas the wildlife is going to be. Again, you got Route 2 right here. You've got additional commercial. You've got there's a wetland swamp back here with full of Phragmites. That's back there.
So is there some other method that you can employ that would allow a wildlife corridor?
The only best way would be a berm, and the berms can easily be moved by earth equipment. It's kind of a defined solid thing. Again, I mean, earth equipment, they'll come in. If the berm's taking up too much space, they'll cut the berm in half just to give themselves a little more space. That's what they're going to think. And that's why a concrete barrier we felt was the best option there. I do agree. I mean, it's a weird situation. If this was a shallower bank slope and there was a lot more, then I would think of that. But I mean, even if you
But you're judging that on your standards with 2 feet. I mean, your 2 feet.
3 feet, it's 3 feet.
No, I'm talking about your
Those-
2
those-
feet
oh.
walking up the slope.
Yes.
As opposed to an animal.
It is, it's
It-
very
doesn't matter.
difficult.
Well, I understand that, but I'm also looking at the from a wildlife valuation standpoint, which I've done many with my colleague who's a wildlife biologist, looking at the whole area as a whole, in the sense of wildlife in the area. You have areas around this area that are more likely to be used, and as across Route 2, you've got a larger forested area right along that corridor before you hit the mall. Versus, again, you've got Route 2 here, Chevrolet here,
I know
this
the
here,
area.
Tracy
I know
down
the
there.
area.
So
I appreciate that. But let me ask you this. Are there Jersey barriers that are constructed with wildlife corridors in them?
you could.
Then why not?
My fear again is because if I was putting something for a subdivision, I would do those because it's going to be a homeowner association, something else that's going to be a more, they're not going to have equipment around. Again, we're going to have equipment. I mean, honestly, if you start leaving gaps, those gaps are going to quickly be, because again, if they dump material and there's a gap right behind that material, right behind that hole, they're going to fill the hole up. This material is going to spill through it and go down. I mean, yeah, we could, if you want, we could do some smaller spacings if you wanted to condition like maybe 4 inches just for some of the smaller wildlife to get through spacing, but anything larger than that, you're going to start, I feel you're going to open yourself up to the concerns that are there. In some ways, the applicant is able to just leave it as is.
Right.
If he wanted to, and I think it's a cost for him to put this in, but at the same time, I think in the long-term net protection of this bank, this slope to the bank of the National River, it's an improvement to ensure that there's no more. And again, you're talking. So this is 100 feet. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 400 or 500 feet. That's it for impact to any type of movement, and then they can easily go around the end here and then around here. So I think there is possibility for movement around it that is, and for whatever is moving in the sense of moving in big areas across that area.
Mr. Colombo, if I may.
Sure.
I have been out to the site a couple of times, and it is my opinion that this Jersey Bay area would be better because they've already shown that they're not careful of the berm as it is.
Right.
There's already debris being pushed down. So I personally like to see Jersey Bay replace the fence because of how this contract yard's been behaving. We have experience with contract yards. We know how it ends up usually. So I do agree with what he's saying, that it's probably more important to stop them from dumping the material down, dumping the snow down with all the chemicals in it, possibly any oil or fuel. 'Cause they've already shown a disregard,
I'm just
unfortunately.
concerned that we're, yet again, one more time, we're walling in another area in a wildlife corridor that's spent the last 50 years coming back. That's my concern. Can we space them?
I think, again, we could space, I mean, I guess, how wide of a corridor are we talking? Instance of, I mean, are we looking for, because again, like, I think if we did a foot, then we might have to look at some sort of other options as to how to make a barrier around that corridor opening, just because, again, just to create some sort of continuous barrier rather than just leaving a gap. Because again, I see a gap either 2 feet wide, 1 foot wide, 2 feet wide, that having them dump a pile of gravel material or something else that they're storing there temporarily.
Could you sidestep them and stagger them?
We could do that.
I just would like to see a space.
I think if that's your request, we could definitely look at. I mean, they're typically 8 feet long. I think Jersey barriers. So you could recommend that you could condition that every 5 Jersey barriers that there's a step, that there's a 1 foot step, and that there's a 1 foot overlap on each end. So that allows for again, it allows for movement to come around. But it prevents a straight shot into the resource area.
Right.
Like that's definitely something I think that we could definitely talk about.
I just have some real issues walling the whole thing off.
I definitely understand that. Yeah, it's a valid question. It's a valid point, and it's a difficult. I would like to if we could do something like that. I think we'll definitely talk to the applicant to see if he's willing to. I think we might be able to work with that.
Talk with them.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I show you a diagram?
Sure.
Are you proposing something like this here? So would you get like that type of gap?
Right, so if you're
Then
coming
you'd
up the
have
slope,
another one like that.
if you're coming up the slope, you can just go around that and get through.
Yeah, we do 1 foot staggered and then 1 foot overlap. That prevents if there's a pile put there, the pile would have to kind of snake around the Jersey barrier, and that at least provides the protection that you want, but it allows the movement as well. So I think that's definitely
As
possible.
long as we can allow for some movement.
Yeah, understood.
I'll be honest, the client would be more than delighted to not have to put the energy card up.
Well, I think they're a great idea, but if
It's a cost.
I'm an animal, I don't think they're a very good idea.
No, it's a very good point.
And the whole area has been walled off, so I'd like to see some areas stay.
It's a good point, and your suggestion is a very good suggestion to
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I just think they did a good job keeping it out of the resource area. You know, that little corner of the building and some, infiltration to me is an improvement over what could be on the site. And, I think the barrier with those modifications is definitely good, for everybody, so.
Angie, you've been on the site, obviously. Your thoughts?
I agree with the Jersey barrier. Just being there I was there 1 week, and then a couple weeks later I was back out there again, and they'd already done some damage. So I think it's an improvement. I do have concerns about the stormwater and the washing of trucks as well on the property. That's a big issue on contractor sites, as well as they need a special that needs to be included in their stormwater permit. And their infiltration system will need to handle any sort of chemicals and oil separator.
Well, that would be all done in the maintenance garage, which has an oil water separator, which goes to the sewer system.
So
So that's actually been addressed.
yes, but my concern is that if the contractors decide not to do it in the maintenance garage, they decide to do it outside, that's one of my concerns that I would suggest be a condition.
So you're suggesting maybe a proprietary,
Because again,
I'm just suggesting a condition that they do all the washing in the
There's
maintenance
only
garage.
one area.
Oh, okay.
There's only you can just say condition. I mean, there's only one area drain on the entire site that's actually capturing surface runoff. Everything else is gutters.
and that's
So-
gonna be all grass and landscape area anyway, so.
Yeah, right in that edge.
So what are you suggesting for the stormwater? Just that, just to
I
put
was
in there?
suggesting
Oh,
it
okay.
be a condition
I thought you
that
were-
the commission's aware of.
when you said you had concerns, I thought it was gonna be enormous concern.
If you could word what you'd like to see, just so we could show the applicant what kind of condition you're thinking about.
I would just
That
like to see them wherever they have in the maintenance garage, if that's where they have
Yeah.
the treatment area,
Yeah.
that's where they're doing the washing, that they're not doing it out in the driveway.
Well, I'm just saying how, if you're gonna word that as a condition,
I'll just,
I
it's just
would- I
washing the
would- I would-
trucks.
Well, yeah, I just wanna make sure that the applicant understands, is, just in case he wants to change something on his design possibly because he may wanna do something different than what you're asking for, he may want to consider that if he sees the wording that you're.
I think I got it, I think it's clear.
Basically, yeah, she's just saying that all vehicle washing take place in the designated.
Yeah, in the
And
designated
those two
maintenance
maintenance buildings
In the
area,
building.
with the floor drains,
Yeah.
again, going to
If
the.
it's outside, you're gonna have to
oil
get a
water separation.
recirculating system.
And if
It costs $150,000.
if the property owner decides he doesn't like the conditions, he's always able to appeal it to the state after their issue.
Well, I said, but again, why would he want, if he can work with you on something, that's why it's better to work with you before, rather than going through the appeal process, because then you guys get dragged in as well, and it's just a longer process as a whole, and I think he doesn't want that, he wants to work
Understandable.
directly with you.
I'm pretty sure
He
he's
wants
gonna
to,
have
he's also able
absolutely
to come
no.
attend the meetings too, but that, we do have some, property owners that do that.
I'm gonna say he's probably gonna have absolutely not a bit of an
Yeah.
issue with that. It's gonna be a problem.
I mean, it sounds like he's already made accommodations for that to take place anyway.
Yeah.
I just
We-
want,
Well, I did that in my design, to
Yeah,
have,
well,
to
yeah,
have the oil water separator in each building.
Any other comments or questions at this time? Yes, sir.
I've only given all the documents a cursory review, so I'll try to be brief and just general here. But a couple of quick things, listening to your presentation. I'll separate the redevelopment riverfront question from the stormwater question. I think you mentioned that you designed the stormwater system as all redevelopment, is that correct?
No,
Okay.
I said, as a redevelopment, you are required by the stormwater policy to meet the standards to the maximum extent practical. We were able to do that, so we did it.
You said
We did do it.
You said you meant.
I said we didn't have to, but we did.
Well, it says he didn't have to meet all the standards if it wasn't possible, but in this standpoint, he was able to meet all of them, showing that he covered all the areas that are possible to be covered in the stormwater design there.
Okay.
For
So we met it, we met it.
that's the way.
That's really what my question's getting at, because I thought you had implied that you treated it totally as redevelopment, maximum extent practical. But when I look at your plan and I see the increase in impervious area, that to me says you do qualify as new development here as well. So you're not completely in the redevelopment category.
Well, either way, we met all the standards, so I think the issue becomes moot regardless.
Well, it's something, when I get to the calculation and the stormwater checklist, that's just something that I'm gonna be looking for, is that you've shown you
In the report,
whatever portion of the project is actually new development under the regs, I'm gonna be looking for that and making sure that you've met that criteria there.
the report lists all the 10 standards and addresses each one of them individually. So when you read that, you will find that it does meet standards.
Okay.
And
And
the appendices have all the calculations to support it as well. So
And is there an overflow for that infiltration area somewhere?
there's in the downspouts from the building. There's just when it fills up, it just will run out off the downspouts and run off the site.
There's Y junctions at the
That's okay.
bottom of the base of the
I
building.
did consider that. I wasn't sure if that question would come up or not, but
Because an invert out of the system would be into the slope of the river.
Right.
it is possible. One thing I did on it was this tiny site in Cambridge, they didn't want a connection to the stormwater system, so we put in just at the peak elevation of the system, we put in a area drain, so it would bubble up at that elevation once it overflowed.
It's a fairly flat.
So looking at the grading, I actually already looked at how it would work out from a design standpoint. It would probably end up somewhere at a grade down here.
It's a very flat
Where
site.
the peak of the system is. So you basically end up, if you wanted, and you don't feel that the roof downspout overflows is sufficient, you could put a PVC pipe to an area drain and just let it bubble over and have some riprap prevent erosion from where the flow from the bubble opens. For the other consideration, I talked to John Roseberry about this as well, and I think this is normally on something like this. In the city, again, you do it to the storm drain system, no problem, they accept that. You would have it, you would daylight it to an area. However, I discussed that with John, and to daylight, to put a pipe out here 3 feet under the ground with some riprap would just probably just crush the slope because it's so steep. So we thought that was from an erosion standpoint, a very bad idea.
Letting the water bubble up along the system itself and then just pool up here versus immediately having it come out is just, I think that was the general reason for Joe's.
And again, this system is, and I talked about John too about doing a berm, so a longer berm, if we did it on the slope, and it would bubble over uniformly with 30 feet, but it's still, that slope is just so vulnerable. It's, a discharge there would be very bad. And you gotta remember, this system is massive, so it controls the 100-year storm, the entire volume. So it's not gonna be full very rarely. So when you look at the 2 10-year storm, you know, I don't have the exact numbers, but you know, the 100-year storm, the volume's here, the 2 and 10 are gonna be way down here, so there's very little chance that it's gonna even need an overflow because it's designed to meet the maximum capacity for the 100-year storm.
If it holds the entire 100 year, is that using a static or dynamic calc in the exfiltration? I can go through your HydroCAD stuff. Okay.
It's through the HydroCAD, but it's static.
Okay. And then, what is that infiltration area receiving other than rooftop? I noticed there's an area.
I said
drain.
there is that, and I failed to mention that when I initially went over it. There is that one little area drain that if you look, there's a small area, you can see it in the stormwater report, I won't pull it out, but the area breakdown. It's just a small subcaption, maybe a little bit in front. Probably center around there that goes to that area drain.
Okay.
And like I said, that's all landscape and lawn area.
And my last question, I'm focusing mainly on stormwater here. You don't have a test pit immediately in the infiltration area, but you've got one close by. Is that
It's pretty close by right here, yeah. I mean, I think initially we could propose in our preliminary plan, the storage building right here was going to be in this back corner. We thought it would be better to a degree to hide it from sight and view. But when we discussed it with the agent, we all agreed to get it further out of the 200-foot zone would be better, so we relocated it. And, so yeah, we did the test pit. It's pretty close by. I think it's very representative of the elevation that the system is at.
I saw your deep log and the perk test. Was the perk really done about 10 feet down?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
And you can discuss that with John.
I saw that he witnessed it, right?
Yeah, and I have a picture on my phone here if you really were interested in it. Again, the hole wasn't that deep, but when you dig the 18-inch hole, it gets it down.
Any other comments or questions? Anybody in the audience like to speak on this NOI? Second time, the final time.
May I
Right. Yeah.
make a few
Sure.
comments? I don't think we addressed all of what the agent was asking about. Adam Rickery's 3 things, we only got to 1 of those.
Yeah.
So the other 2, the mounting analysis wasn't done. I can discuss that with him if he feels that's really necessary. And then the 72-hour drawdown analysis. I think you can see in the hydrographs that it does drain within the 72 hours, so I'll discuss that with him and we consider that in the design. But that he's sufficient. So would you be satisfied if I went through those 3 elements with him and got his?
Yeah, just so we know that
Approval on-
DEP's been satisfied as well. We try to work with them in their comments and address them. So we have a site visit scheduled for next week on the 9th.
Is that this week? Oh, that's mine.
That'll be next Monday, I believe it's at 4:30.
Okay. I'll leave the public hearing open. When's our next meeting? Do you want to continue it to the 10th, or do you want to continue it to the meeting after that?
When's the next meeting after that? Just
September 24th.
Yeah, I will be unavailable the 24th, so. I guess for the time being,
We can continue to the 10th, and if you can't get answers,
We can
or something
notify-
happens,
we can
just,
notify
you can
him.
just notify Angie.
are you gonna have more comments before then, or? I guess my concern is, if there were gonna be more comments, we would like to address all those comments at one time. And maybe get,
Mm-hmm.
if the commission is satisfied with everything and approval, rather than come back again and,
Yeah.
Yeah, so if after the site visit, there won't be any discussion at the site visit due to open meeting law, but after the site visit at the meeting, if the commission members have any other comments, they'll make those comments or questions, and you can either address them then, or if it's something that needs more work or needs a revised plan, the commission will decide whether to issue. In the past, we've done orders of conditions with a contingency, waiting for plan revisions. It depends on the situation now.
if Brad has comments, he's welcome to submit them to you, and you could forward them to us, and that can be part of the record. That way the comments come a little sooner than a week from the 10th, because that's just, if he has a stormwater question that we can quickly address in a few days, it's useful. I know it's on his own time, so whenever he's able to get to it, but if the commission thinks of any other comments, and they can email them to her, and you can combine it, and that would be great, just so we have a little more, again, because I think there's a lot of these things are probably just clarification questions, or tweaks we can make, and fairly easy just to shorten the hearing process, so we don't have to come back too many times. I think that would be, well, so again, that would be great.
That's fine. Okay, so we'll continue it to the 10th, site walk at 4:30.
On the 9th.
And,
I do have a conflict on the 10th, so if we could be put early on the agenda, again, I don't know if that's possible or not.
I'll have to double check, because it does go in the order of receipt. I know you guys requested it earlier in
Okay.
this agenda.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at the other agenda. We have a couple other projects that weren't, this is a
Yeah.
special meeting just for these projects.
Okay.
So there are several other projects. Unfortunately, I get a lot of requests, to be put first on the agenda.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to kind of
I know,
get
I
7
have
projects first.
I have another project in Hopkinton that's being.
Yeah,
put on
I'll do my best.
so-
I'll talk to the other applicants and see what I can arrange. I can't promise anything.
I know people like to get home early, so I'm not trying to get home
Like
early, I'm
everyone-
just trying to get to my other meetings. So
I'm a night owl.
Yeah, I'm off to Framingham now, so.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you, gentlemen.
thank you. Thank you, have a great night.
Thank you.
See Brad.
All right. Our next hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended. There'll be a public hearing to consider notice of intent for Peter Anderson to build a single-family home with driveway, garage, associated grading utilities. The work takes place in a buffer zone of an intermittent stream of bordering vegetated wetlands, Hillary Road, map 413, parcel 7A, DEP 199-1090. Welcome.
For the record, Chris Anderson. I'm here on behalf of Peter Anderson for a site development plan over in Hillary Road. We've been before the commission, I guess it was a couple meetings ago, relative to the project. Just to refresh everybody, it's for a single-family home with associated septic system and driveway. Currently, there's a bordering vegetated wetland that kind of hugs along the northern property line. During the previous hearing, there was concern raised by several commission members relative to the actual delineation, the age of it, and whether or not it's still valid, and some of the drainage ditches and channels that are out there currently. So we had Karen Environmental go back out, review the delineation again. We made a couple tweaks to the overall layout of the flags. Relative to this project, he moved specifically flags number 19 and 20 closer to the actual stream channel, if you will. As a,
Where on the plan, Chris?
wetland flag 20 is right here.
Okay.
This one moved in 20 feet, or sorry, 12 feet, and 19 moved in 3 feet. So it moved further away from our proposed work, and we didn't propose any changes to the limit of work from what we previously discussed. So the plan is essentially the same as was presented before, with modification of the actual wetland locations.
What did Mr. Karen address that top channel, I guess we call it?
In his report,
Question.
he documented that he walked up into the area that we walked on during the sidewalk. Noticed there were no vegetated wetlands, upgrading of the actual channel, therefore the channel is not jurisdictional under the act.
Okay. And that's that channel for basically the
Yeah, the two channels that kind of intersect into
okay.
the
So there was nothing up on that. Okay. Questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Just have one question. With respect to the retaining wall, I think there was my memory serves, there was a note on the plan that that's going to be designed by others.
In certain areas, it does exceed the 4-foot height limits within the building codes and everything like that, so those would be designed by an actual geotech/structural engineer for that.
Can you just point to which ones?
It's primarily this one. These ones on the back side of everything are less than 3 feet, with the exception, I believe, of this one right here. But the largest retaining wall is hugging the southern property line.
Construction sequence-wise, is the plan to put those walls in before you do the house construction?
Pretty much, you kind of have to build up that area first and then excavate in order to get the foundation hole in the ground, essentially, just because we're filling in that area. So there would be almost a simultaneous either construction of the retaining walls at the same time, or just build it up and then excavate for the foundation.
So my only comment with that is I'd like to see the PE plan for the retaining walls prior to the issuance of the building permit or the building construction of the site.
Which will be provided to the building inspector as part of the submittal package to him, the building permits.
Now, does he require the PE for anything over 4? Because building code, I think, is 10.
My understanding from the get-go has always been that.
Okay.
In my mind, I think 3.5.
Yeah, no, I know. I've been through the building code issues before. It's 4 for the permit from bottom of foot into top of wall. But usually, depending on the municipality, some inspectors will require the stamp plans 10 feet and up. Some will ask for it at 4. That's why I just wanted to clarify the process here.
He typically requires it for 4.
Okay. But in any event, we can condition it so that we have it.
We at least have the
Yeah.
plan of the wall.
Because I do think it's going to, at least require some thought on them, just because you do have that wetland resource area immediately up gradient of it. I do have some concern about that stream, and the topography kind of supports that, potentially jump in that area rather than following
This one?
more defined. Not that one, but if you look at, that kind of comes straight down in some areas. There's a little bit of a berm there when you walk the field, the wetland one, the one that's actually flagged.
This one?
Yeah, so there's an area where, if you look at the topo that goes right into the driveway,
Yep.
there's a little bit of a berm there that's been formed over the years, and some of it may not even be natural, to kind of keep it going in the other direction. My concern, without really looking too closely at the watershed, but thinking if you've got bigger storms, if there's a potential for it to actually kind of jump that, head in that direction. And where you're going to be putting a wall right at that intersection, I just want to see that, that the person designing the wall thought about that and making sure that everything's going to go where it needs to go and that the wall's going to be designed appropriate.
Yeah, we can work with the designer of the wall, give him a little bit more detail relative to spot grades in the area, so he can anticipate, or they can anticipate proper locations. My recollection from being on the site, there's quite a bit of a berm that does form through here. It's our intent to try to maintain that as much as possible. But I understand your hesitation relative to that.
Anything else? Any other comments or questions? All right. Anybody else in the audience like to speak on this notice of intent? Second time and final time. Any objection to closing the public hearing? All right. With that, I declare the public hearing closed. Do I have a motion to issue or not issue a notice of intent? I would say with the added condition that PE plans be available stamped by the engineer prior to building the wall. And Brad, are you requiring, you want the walls built before foundation, or, I know we talked about it, just didn't know if you.
But, I mean, it makes sense for that site to
do that first.
do that earthwork first, including the walls.
Okay. Do I have a motion for that and or any other conditions from any board members?
I'll make a motion for standard order conditions with the boilerplate, with the added condition that the stamped plan be provided to the commission prior to construction and the issuing of the building permit, and also that the earthwork and associated stone associated with the walls be constructed prior to the actual building itself. Structure itself.
Do I have a second on that? All in favor? Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right. Next hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended. There will be a public hearing to notice of intent by Sunpin Solar Development on land owned by Kenneth Vashon of the construction of a 7.488 megawatt direct current ground-mounted solar photovoltaic project, including access road, perimeter fence, stormwater controls. The access road requires a wetland crossing. All wetland impacts will be compensated by construction of a replication area. The address is 449 Wachusett Street, Assessor's Map 381, parcel and is left blank. So, do we have a DEP file number on this?
I just received it today. The DEP file number is 1991095.
95. Someone representing the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Steve Herzog. I'm with AMAC, Massachusetts, representing the applicant. I'm the wetland ecologist who delineated wetlands on the project. And I'll be happy to talk a little bit about the project and then answer questions. I know some members of the commission attended a site walk several weeks ago, so there's some familiarity with the project. We're proposing a solar photovoltaic project on a small part of a very large parcel. The parcel is 363 acres. The area of solar development, the area of tree clearing, that including the solar array and the access road, is about 26.7 acres. The project will be accessed from Elm Street, which is to the west side of the project and northwest of Washington Street. This is an overview of existing conditions. Go right to the proposed conditions. So the parcel actually extends a long way to the south. The parcel also includes Grandview Country Club. And we're proposing a solar array up here on a relatively flat upland area. This is Haynes Reservoir. These polygons are water supply protection area offsets from the reservoir and from intermittent stream channels. So we're proposing access from Elm Street into this area of the site. We're here before the commission because in order to get access, we need to cross a bordering vegetated wetland. That was the most reasonable point of access to the site for two reasons. One, there's an existing logging road from Elm Street that the proposed access road will follow most of that course. Also, there's a large wetland to the east, to the south, which drains to Fall Brook, and it hugs up against the edge of the golf course. So there's really no practical way to get to this part of the site without crossing a wet area. And this was the least impactful place to cross. So those of you who are on the sidewalk know this, but I'll point out the access road makes a small jog here to the south to go around the extent of the water supply protection area. So we've identified this as wetland A. So the existing logging road cuts right across here, but it's very narrow and will require significant improvement to get development and maintenance vehicles into the site. Development of this water supply protection area is prohibited under the Watershed Protection Act. So that's why we're proposing the access road to dive south of that polygon. That will result in 15,824 square feet of BVW impact. It's a pretty large number, but there's plenty of space on the site for replication, and we've shown a very approximate replication polygon of 23,736 square feet, which is 1.5 times the area of impact. We propose replication generally in keeping with the state wetland replication checklist. We propose this broad area with poorly defined size because we'd like to define the area in the field so as to avoid cutting mature trees, because this BVW is all a forested swamp. The project qualifies as a limited project because the only impact is due to this access. What else should you know? Back to the overview. So that there was a wetland here to the east and south. That wetland and its buffer zone will be completely avoided by the project. There's a perennial stream, there's an intermittent stream in the wetland that transitions to a perennial stream about here. We've also avoided the 200-foot river front area. So really what we're asking tonight is for order conditions allowing the development of this solar array and this access road, which will impact these wetlands. So that's the project in a nutshell. I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
I just want to make a comment, Larry, about, we did go on site walk, from what I remember. The area was relatively flat. So the replication area, although we didn't really walk the replication area because it was in that vicinity, but we did have that discussion about basically the area because they didn't want to touch as many trees. So that's kind of why his plan looks like that, because that's fine. I guess my only question, and we talked about it on the sidewalk, is did you at all ask the watershed people at all? Just because it's already an existing pathway, I understand why you're proposing it this way, but
I did make one phone call, and I was told to check the regulations, and we would need a waiver from the Watershed Protection Act. So I did not provide a lot of site detail and go on a site walk with them. My impression was we would need to get a waiver, which requires a public hearing and the NEPA ENF process. But as we discussed on the site walk, we did weigh those two options, and the developer thought this was the more expedient of the two. I have mixed feelings about it being an ecologist. I I would think there may be less impact going this way to the wetland overall, because some of it is already upland.
Right.
But I understand that we would be making soil disturbance within this watershed protection act area.
We're disturbing more wetland by doing the loop around. Okay, that's my only question.
So
Yes,
you
Lynn.
received the DEP comments?
I did.
I'm not
Okay.
gonna read them all. I think I did provide everyone with a copy.
Okay.
They're pretty extensive.
So, yeah, we received them, what, 3:07 p.m.
Today?
today.
Yeah.
After
So you've addressed
many
them all.
phone calls over the last few weeks. I'm getting worried. Maybe they're really, really angry or something. But I think they're just overwhelmed. You know, Julie Schmitz, and I spoke with her on the phone, so they've been very busy. But if you'd like, we can go through them and I can tell you in general what our responses will be, but no, we're not prepared to. I think we should issue responses in writing to the commission, if that's your preference.
That's better for the file as well.
I did not review them. Did you review them at all?
Did it come at 3 o'clock on a meeting night? But they
Any
expressed
major-
concerns over erosion controls as well as the alternative analysts. They had some concerns about the replication area as well. They had questions about culverts. A lot of soil specification questions and growing media. Seismic site plans. And then they had the additional requirements for the 401 water quality certification that may be required. So they're pretty extensive comments. I did send them out to everyone as well.
I just haven't had a
It's-
chance to review them.
They're good if you've never the night of the meeting. It's always a little difficult to.
Yeah. The last one with 401, I believe, is because we're proposing more than 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
In fact. The other ones seem reasonable to me.
I think they'll be pretty easy to clear up, but it's just better since there's so many, just to have it all in writing, I think could be preferable.
Any comments or questions? I know Larry, you had one.
I'm just, I wasn't able to make the site visit, but just looking at this, I'm seeing like the replication area, but I don't really, the area that I'm looking at, I don't necessarily see what the wetland delineation is in reference to that, so
Yes.
I don't really have anything, to base it on. And, sometimes people provide replication areas in areas that are totally inappropriate, for the area, so if you could just have a plan that shows the actual wetland replication area, the proposed roadway and the resource area all on one plan, like the color would be ideal if you can do that, or even if you color by hand, just the lines, just so that visually it makes more sense. And I mean, I understand that it's probably, maybe going through the wetland, the water supply protection district might be more, time consuming, and, but we're trying to minimize the impact on the resource area. The applicant is trying to get this done as quickly and as cheaply as possible. So, I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we can, there's no way to compromise on this because, the two just don't meet, but I think that going through there, it seems like it would be less impactful to the resource area. From what I can tell, I mean, it looks like there's already an existing cart path there. It would only need to be widened. And then it looks like would that minimize or would that eliminate the wetland filling at all? The wetland crossing completely, or?
I don't think it would eliminate it.
I think it would reduce it.
It would reduce it. It depends. We proposed a width of, actually sort of 20 feet. That's what the fire department requires for them to get fire truck access. So I think the width in here between the two wetland lines is less than 20 feet in some places. So it would greatly reduce the area of wetland impact, but I don't think it would eliminate it completely.
And it's already an existing crossing.
Yes.
So you're putting another crossing next to a crossing to save a small amount of filing time. And to me, I think that avenue should be explored as an alternative.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, can I just address what you
Yeah.
said earlier? Interestingly, the DEP analyst also pointed out the wetland delineation is not clear here, and that was an oversight on our part. We did delineate it farther here, but we did this on a second date, and it was not surveyed with the original survey that these plans were drawn upon, and for whatever reason, we did not make it onto this version. The delineation goes all the way, it actually goes off the plan, both sides. So that is not going to be any problem at all to show the replication area in relation to the road and the existing wetland delineation. Yeah.
I remember driving home the evening of the site walk when we were up there, and I was mulling over the idea of why not at least pursue the watershed crossing. I know you said it might be a little more time consuming, maybe a little more expensive, but given now that we see an extensive list of concerns from the DEP, that might be the easier way. You know, and I know when we were out there, I had mentioned to you, why not narrow the roadway? And you said everybody's got their interests, and I understand that, but do you really need 20 feet to drive a fire truck through it?
Yeah,
Find that,
they do.
that's a regular, I mean, there's no cars coming the other way.
But in case, if it's bad weather, if there's snow on the sides, if there's any, they really do need some space if it's an ambulance, if
Yeah.
it's a ladder truck having to get in there. So I believe this was discussed in the technical review as well, but they were, they think they asked for 26 originally, I thought, and then they said 20. Forget, they asked for more, they said 20 would be like the minimum that they would need, just for safety purposes. I never know what's gonna happen on the road as it is, but.
I don't know. I mean, my preference would be to at least see an effort put into the direction of the watershed crossing, just to see what it comes back. I mean, they might come back with a flat no, but as Larry mentioned, you already have an existing pathway there, so they may be open to allowing that. Confronted with the fact of our concerns with the amount of wetlands that's going to be taken out. Just a comment, not a question.
Because the other one, just looking at this plan, I mean, anytime you plow with this plan, you're going to be plowing snow into the water supply protection district. So it's not like this plan is totally taking the project out of the water supply protection district. You're actually on the fringes of it, and you're still going to have minor impact on it anyway. I think, in general, I know, I mean, as a commission member, I would be in, I mean, I don't know how everyone else feels, but I would be in support of, at least, so maybe if the commission felt it was okay, we could support it with a letter or something saying that, we would like, to get an opinion from, is it the city council that?
Who is the
It's
agency
the
there?
planning board.
The planning board is the agency for the wetland, for
For the
the
watershed
watershed.
protection district, yes.
That's just a thought. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's so far away. It's like the furthest point you can get from the actual reservoir. It's like this finger projection. It's not like it's right up against the reservoir. So I think it would actually minimize the amount of impact because this wetland actually feeds. Ultimately it all feeds into the same watershed. So.
Okay.
Speak with Elizabeth as well and see if she wants to write up a letter of comment on behalf of the planning board.
Okay.
I do believe she did do a report after you guys already went to the planning board, correct?
Pardon?
You guys already went to the planning board for
Yes.
site plan. So she usually writes a very eloquent letter stating why they chose for fruit and why they did, and the discussions that were had, so.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Yes.
So I'm having some challenges just trying to read some of the existing and proposed conditions. So So I'm looking at sheet 3 of 8. Is that the best plan to look at this wetland crossing, or?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, and I think you've touched on one of my questions. My concern was we don't have enough wetland delineation in a bunch of areas, but you said you have that? And you'll be able to show that on the plans? Okay. My other concern is I'm having a hard time with the existing topography. So I don't know if there's a lot of lines that are kind of intermediate contours, or how much grade change is going on in those areas, but if we can get better labels on there, just so I can see what's going on.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty flat.
Okay. Even if there's spot shots or something that gives a better indication of what's there for grading. Reading the existing topography is a little challenging. I think, well, if I get better glasses on, I can probably read the grades of the proposed contours, but the existing one looks tough. Couple other things. It looks like the access drive is designed to shed everything to the north of the driveway there. Doesn't look like you're putting a crown in it. Is that correct? Just if I follow the contours?
You're right, the contours don't show much crown. I mean, I think the typical design has a very minor crown, but no, it's not supposed to shed water. It's going to be crushed stone, so there will be infiltration of the water that strikes it.
Okay, but at some point it will, whether it's crushed stone or whatever, you are going to get something shedded from that. My concern is it's all being directed, looks to the north. It's going to come to that low point of the driveway. Are you proposing, even, not considering the stormwater on the driveway itself, but the actual flow in the wetland area, are you proposing any culverts or anything there just to maintain the conductivity through that resource area?
We had not proposed any because there are none in this existing access road, but it certainly wouldn't be difficult to put a few, say, to maintain the hydraulic connection.
And then I've got one last one too. I know another commissioner started talking about the replication area. You mentioned, I'm not mistaken, you designed it at 1.5 to 1 replication?
Yes.
Okay. And I appreciate that. I've got quite a bit of experience with them. They quite often fail, and that's one of my concerns with just simply showing a 2D hatched area as the replication area. What I like to see is more detail in terms of grading, how you're going to get the desired hydrology in that area. I do like to see planting plans as well. I appreciate that you want to possibly save some trees in that area. I mean, that's something that's sometimes done, and I don't have any issues with that. But I'd rather not do it as an entirely, well, let's build it as we go in the field and just show a hatched area. I really want some more thought into where that is, how that's going to work, how that ties into the existing water and wetlands, just to make sure that we've got enough information there to show that we're going to, at the end of the day, at least get a 1-to-1 and hopefully more.
Okay.
Angela, is there a way, no, so this commission's concerned, but is there a way to expedite with the the planning board, help with this? Because I think, it sounds to me at least, this half of the table would rather see it kind of stay on the existing,
Yeah, I can
disturbed area.
I get
I
a
mean-
letter before the next meeting, I'm sure.
I just,
I can have a discussion with her at least, and kind of see, because she represents the planning board, but
Right.
obviously the planning board has, just like the conservation commission, they have like their own
right.
opinions on it. But I can simply discuss with her and see if there's any reason or reason not.
Because there's a lot less impact, and it might address some of these concerns that, if we kind of help the applicant and help our concerns along the way. I think it's a win-win for everybody.
And I
If you're
think,
okay with
that's
it.
not, that's that DCR watershed, that's not for the Wachusett, it's just for the WPS, the Paraso. Just wanted to be clear.
Yeah. And I should say, I agree, it may be better for all. One other consideration that our client had is if we went that route and had to go through the DNF process and all this, the DCR could just say no at the end. 6 months or whatever it takes, we don't know, they could say no. So let's start with this approach. But it's reasonable to inquire if you think.
I guess, I mean, that's what,
Can we have a discussion with her and see, maybe grab some planning board meeting minutes if they're done, and I'll send them out to you all before the meeting for review.
I don't want you to wait 6 months to get a no, but I'd like to at least.
He's been here for a while.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. Do you have an idea as to what the distance would be from that existing crossing to the reservoir?
To the reservoir?
Yeah. I know when we were on the site walk, we said, oh, it's quite a ways off, but how much is quite a ways? Because I know that intermittent stream that feeds it wasn't even, we couldn't see that when we were.
Correct.
It just looked like all uplands.
Yeah, this polygon is mapped apparently off 200 feet off Future stream. I don't know if it was mapped on the ground or using air photos. So we can look at the overall site plan and see that. So here's the reservoir. And this is a scale of 1 inch equals 150 feet. So very roughly 2, 4, 6, 8,000 feet. My fingers fit in the 200. So say at least 800 or 900 feet from the reservoir, maybe 1,000 feet.
Maybe that's hard to say no.
I mean, there's also an opportunity to put in there might be an opportunity where we can get some, a small culvert in there so that we're actually getting a hydraulic connection between both sides, so it would be an improvement.
Exactly.
I think it's just cheaper overall, less impact, less replication area, it's just time.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think it would be cheaper. And I'm not Sun-Tinned, so I can't really speak for them, but they're concerned about the time, and concerned about the time plus the possibility of getting a no.
I think the commission would like you to explore that, and I think, again, I don't want to speak for the commission, but I think we're more in favor of at least going that route if possible. I think there's just less impact. Would you like a continuation till the next meeting, which is 6 days from now?
No, thank you.
How about the 24th?
Yeah,
Meeting after
I
that.
think we'll need a little time to review and
The EP comments.
respond to the EP comments, because some of those required a little bit of effort.
Okay. We'll continue it to the September 24th meeting, and if, obviously, you can work with our agent if something's not addressed, or, you can just verbally ask for a continuance before the meeting is fine.
I actually like them in writing, so I can put them in the folder.
Okay.
I think
Send her an
the
email.
24th should be fine.
So, do you have any questions for us or comments before you leave?
Would you like me to proceed with inquiring with DCR at the same time you inquire with the planning board, or how should we proceed with this?
Is it
Yeah.
DCR too is involved?
I thought it was just planning board they had to
I
inquire.
don't know.
Let me look into it and see. I think we need to inquire the planning board because the WPS is actually just like the city of Leominster's watershed protection district. So it's for our reservoirs. I do know some of our reservoirs do go into the Wachusett Reservoir, and we do have some areas. I just have to look at the maps again and just see. So I do know part of this parcel is part of the Wachusett, a very brief part of it, like the 400-foot tributary area. But I haven't looked at that aspect in a good 6 months, I think, for you guys.
I know that this area is on a map. I believe it's
Yeah,
all
it's like
connected to the Wachusett.
Yeah, I do know a portion of it was out of it, and I believe that you guys had thought it was completely out of it, but once again, the Watershed Protection District is not my jurisdiction, so I'm gonna double check with Elizabeth, and I will, I'll communicate with you.
Okay. Okay, that would be great.
If it is out though, you can get a letter from them saying that
Yeah,
it's
that's-
out of their jurisdiction.
Exactly.
So it would just be the planning board at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
let me double check. I remember I was helping you guys in the beginning when you guys first came through, looking at the Watershed Protection District and all the different regulations. But
It might be in the applicant's interest to have a letter in hand saying that it's from DCR, that it's out of their jurisdiction. It might just be something, logistically, it might be something that would be something better to have on hand. Going down the road. If something changes or something happens, you at least have something from them in writing that says, as of this date, we.
Yeah.
Right.
I suspect it is though within the Wachusett. What is the planner's name?
Elizabeth Wood.
Because I think she is the one who forwarded this information to my colleague Drew Bardakis, and this shows a small corner of Leominster as being tributary to the Wachusett. But we can find that out.
Yeah, that was the conversation I had with Drew.
Okay.
Anybody in the audience like to speak on this notice of intent? Second time and last time. All right, I'll leave the public hearing open. And if there's no other comments or questions, we will continue it to the September 24th meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, final hearing. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended. There will be a public hearing for a notice of intent for Mark and Deborah Giovanucci. I can tell. By Hannah Giovanucci for the demolition of a 1.5-story home and failed septic system. This also includes the construction of a 2.5-story house with a sewer service connection via a suspended ice insulated line from an existing bridge that will be raised. It will be over an inland resource area, including a shrub wetland and intermittent stream. The project includes the associated driveway, grading, utilities, and landscaping improvements within the 100-foot buffer zone, address 644 Pleasant Street, Assessor's Map 406, Parcel 1C. We have a DEP file number on this.
Yes, we received it right before the meeting. The DEP file number is 199-1096.
Someone represent the applicant.
Hello, members of the commission. Angela, nice to meet you. I'm Hannah Giovanucci, and I'm a professional engineer representing the applicant. We're here for an NOI and also a stormwater permit, and it's an abbreviated one because we are a residential area and it's disturbing over 5,000 square feet, 20% of the parcel, and we are also replacing the existing structure as well. So for the site, this is about an acre. We have an existing building, or existing 1.5-story house right here. There are a couple of septic systems that are in failure. I believe they were probably installed when the house was built around the 1940s. Ever since the house has been purchased in 1986, it's been pretty much in failure. So the idea is to replace this existing house, which has a failing roof among other issues. Again, it was built in the 1940s. And connect to a sewer service that will go over this inland resource area. This house sits on top of a drumlin hill, and so some stormwater, and I think the break in the proposed grading is about like right here, goes this way towards the inland resource area. The inland resource area was delineated by Karen Environmental. It includes an intermittent stream and a bordering vegetated wetland. There's also a stream crossing right here, and if you look in some of your documents, I think the stormwater report, you'll see there's an existing crossing right there, and we got it out of a slide that we found in the walls, and we're assuming it's probably between 1940s, 1960s that bridge and the footings have been there. So the idea is to propose the septic line, which will be suspended underneath this bridge. It'll be insulated with just insulation and also an electrical wire. And then the bridge itself will be raised about 6 inches just to better accommodate that line that goes underneath. While doing this, we will not be disturbing, altering, dredging, anything that's related to this wetland area, and we're not doing any grading within the floodplain either. So here is where the 100-foot buffer is. Within this area, again, we're not doing anything in this resource area here. And although we are increasing impervious by, I think it's like 150 square feet, we're doing drywalls for this roof right here. So this entire roof area will be diverted into drywalls. And we're still trying to figure out the position on them because we're going to do a couple test pits to figure out where the groundwater is. So for the overall site, it's about 13,500 square feet. And again, we're doing these drywalls right here. And around that entire disturbance, we'll have a Filtrex filter sock to help with the erosion. And we are also meeting Mass DEP standards 1, 8, 9, 10, as well as the other standards to the maximum extent practicable. And overall, this project we designed, there were a number of different considerations with how to do the sewer, but we decided to go a route that did the minimum impacts to this. Other thoughts were doing horizontal drilling underneath with a pressure system, but we were worried about, on either edge of these, you might have to excavate to actually get that to be constructed. I think there was a suggestion to go through neighboring properties, but we weren't certain about that with, legally trying to do that. And we originally were gonna do a driveway up front here to make this lot conforming with zoning because there is a shared access driveway right here, but we decided that was too much impact to this wetland area here. And then the last thing I want to mention is by removing the septic, we'll also hopefully improve the wetland area so that there's no nitrate pollutions. And with that, I'd like to open this up for questions. And I appreciate you guys for having this meeting tonight and getting together unexpectedly. Oh, I also have a couple of emails that we just got. It was a minute before this hearing happened with comments from Mass DEP.
I did forward it all to you. Guys should all have it on your phones as well.
Okay. And I do think we resolved a lot of things because actually Angela.
The email from Hannah again I have, which is on the Google Drive.
Angela actually noted some things about an out of date, or the floodplain shown on the original plans didn't have the correct flood zone. So we just got that and updated it and revised the grading according to just make sure it was outside.
And that's in the Google Drive.
Share. Who else needs to share? Last one? You'll notice the sewer profile that we have over here too, so you can see kind of a cross-sectional view of where the disturbances are.
This garage, is this existing?
The one in this corner right here?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's existing.
Yeah.
That driveway is all existing.
The white one is right here.
Okay.
This is a proposed new one. And this all sheds this way. And there's a ton of woods in here. Actually, the woods aren't shown in here because the survey stopped right here. But these are all woods in here.
I'm sorry, I missed out on the garage. Is the garage being raised as well and replaced?
The garage is staying right here. And
It's staying.
We call it a barn. I don't know why. The surveyor called it a garage, but it's a barn and, with kind of workshop things in there, tools.
The pool is currently there, right?
Yes.
Okay.
big improvements are the house, the sewer, and the driveway to connect to this new garage. Actual garage, right here.
There was a mention of the stream being perennial upstream, but has that been, it's listed as intermittent here, but I guess further upstream it's labeled, identified as perennial.
I'm not sure about that
Upstream
perennial.
and downstream
Yeah.
is Fallbrook. It comes from the reservoir.
Okay. So if it's perennial upstream and downstream, it's kind of hard to be an intermittent in between, so that,
So
that would.
Bill Hannigan and I discussed this, and looking at the Mass DEP regulations, it has to be shown on the USGS map, which it isn't. And then additionally, unless it has a watershed size less than 1 square mile, it is intermittent unless, so it is less, we did the watershed with the map streaming, what is it called?
Stream stats.
Stream stats. And I think it was only like a half an acre. That was included in the stormwater report. And because it was less than a square mile, we determined that it would not be intermittent. And this was done by Karen Environmental too, who did this research.
So I've gotten different opinions on it from the DEP as well. Some say a couple of the circuit riders say they might slip by with it. Another circuit rider said it is perennial. So it's definitely up for discussion. I don't know, Brad, if you want to talk about the sidewalk or.
Well, I have a number of questions too, so we get to them. You okay, Mr. Chairman, if I speak?
Yes, sorry.
Let's touch base with the stream last if we can. I think that's going to involve the most discussion. But you mentioned the use of dry wells for the house. I very much appreciate that. I wish everybody would come in with that proposal to us. I think the importance of recharging as much impervious as you can on any site's a great benefit. My concern with that is what I typically like to see to make sure that it's going to work. A lot of times the dry wells, depending on the soil condition, they're too deep and sometimes get put into the water table. If you could maybe consider doing a shallower, like an infiltration system, as well as look at the roof design ahead of time and pick the best locations for them, or alternatively, connect the downspouts down below somewhere so that you are capturing the entire or most of the roof if you can. A lot of times I see, people will propose these, but when they're actually in the field, they'll leave, 3/4 of the house unconnected from it because of the way things laid out. They put the drywall in one corner and they didn't want to connect all the downspouts to it somehow. So just put a little bit of thought into that ahead of time if you could, and kind of show that on the plan.
We were considering a couple different locations. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine. Whatever captures the most amount of roof that you think you can get. I mean, ideally we like to see 100, but depending on the architecture of it and how everything works grade-wise, you can't always do that. But my fear again is someone goes to build it, they've put the drywall in, and well, I can only get this section of the house. That's what they're gonna do. That's what ends up happening. The flood zone, just so I understand that correctly, is there a BFE with that, or base flood elevation with that?
There's elevations on the plan, 531, 529. Is that what you're referring to?
The flood elevation, is there a flood elevation for that flood zone? Is there a flood map with the,
It's in the, well, I don't believe there's a flood map, but Hannigan and Jerry did resubmit the floodplains. I think it's 529 and 531.
so there is a BFE with that?
That's what it looks like on this map here. Trying to get it to load. Kind of hard to see because it all goes right along the wetland flags.
ultimately my concern is how much flood zone area is being impacted, as well as where that bottom of the bridge is in relation to that. If you're going to be raising it, can you get it to that RVGR level or above? And also utilities that you may have there, where that falls within as well. We want to see the least amount of risk within that area should that stream come up.
So the sewer profile shows where the zone is on the outer ends of that line going straight down. And then you can see where the existing bridge is, the proposed bridge, and then the sewer line that goes through it too. So the existing grade where the sewer crossing is 532, and then the proposed bridge is about 534-ish, maybe 533.75. Do you see where that is?
Everything's small for me, so I'm having a hard time.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I can't read it.
Get the both sides.
Alright, so this is the zone right here. I just want to make sure this is the right one to update it. So zone A, zone C. This is the existing grade.
Right.
This is
but that's-
where this intersects right here. So you know what? I lied. I'm sorry. It's actually lower. It's 530 on this side, and where this intersects with this, 530. So 530 is the flood elevation underneath the sewer line, and then the proposed
Okay, just
sewer
let me
line.
stop you right there. The 530 is based on what? Are you basing that off existing contour? or off of-
Contours.
Okay, but you've mentioned there was something from Hannigan on that?
Yeah, Hannigan sent out an email, and they did a revised plan here that's in the Google documents.
And the proposed plans show his existing conditions. Can I flip this over? Are you referring to this line that you put here, 531 and 529?
That may be,
And this is his
I think this is
existing conditions here.
I think those are the elevations of,
so that's the BFE then?
Yeah.
So there is a BFE with that?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
Do you have a big one of the existing conditions? This is the updated one from him,
Okay.
if this is helpful.
So, okay, looking at the existing condition plans, another one of my questions now is it's saying that the existing contours are NAV 88, but the flood elevations are based on NGVD. So I'm a little bit concerned elevation-wise, we're comparing apples to apples.
Can you show me where that is?
Right here. They're saying that So the topo that this is saying is not even an on-site. Can you verify that? Was the topography not shot on site? Is it indeed LiDAR, or was there an on-site survey for that?
They spent a lot of time out there.
Yeah, they were there about a week and a half.
That could just be an error.
So I think we need some clarification on that. And also, you understand how they're using two different vertical datums there. They've got tab 88 for the topography lines, but the vertical datum for the vertical datum is NGB. So that's the flood plan. Yep. So the flood maps here in this area are typically NGBD because they haven't updated them yet. So the topography needs to be the same datum as the flood elevations if we're going to compare the impacts of the flood areas.
Do you think he might have adjusted?
He's going to, whoever's stamping this plan is going to have to put that information on here. I
Right.
can't speculate what they're doing, but what it's telling me based on the plan is that they didn't do an on-site survey for this. It's based off of LiDAR information, and the contour and the flood maps. You're comparing apples to oranges. There's going to be some difference in elevation there.
I'll let her know about the notes, but just I think looking at the plan too, we just looked in just the topography that we got, and it was 530. And then what he said for that flood elevation was between 531 and 529. So it does sound like he probably adjusted it accordingly. So maybe I'll just ask him to update the notes.
Yeah, right. It should be on the plans. So
Okay.
Okay. So that's one thing that I do want to take a closer look at is that whole area once we get some more information there. The last thing I'll talk about is the stream. And we've had another commissioner talk about this already too. If I think of the street correctly, is it Teresa Ave that's down there?
Yes, Teresa
As
Ave and
cul-de-sac?
anything in Viva, the whole.
Right. When you look at the USGS map in that area, it does show, so Teresa Ave is to the south of the site. It does show a perennial stream coming from the west side of Pleasant Street, under Pleasant Street. And when you look at, and keep in mind USGS maps are outdated at this point, when you look at that perennial stream, that stream goes directly through Teresa Ave. Teresa Ave was not constructed that way. There isn't a stream going through that I could see anywhere driving around and looking in the field. What it looks like and what GIS has confirmed on other sites is that stream has been rerouted now. Instead of going towards Teresa and heading towards the south and ultimately towards Fallbrook and Samoset area, it now flows north. It flows behind those houses on Teresa Ave. It's culverted under, I forget the name of that road here, just to the south of Pleasant Street. It's culverted there, goes through part of the city's MS4, and then through this particular site here. And the fact that you also have a flood zone with a BFE indicates that you do have some substantial flow there anyway. You typically see that with perennial type streams versus intermittent type streams. So as another commissioner was already mentioning, you have it being perennial here, perennial downstream. The way I see it and the way I interpret the regulations is it's going to be perennial in between there as well. There really isn't any great literature in the regs for when somebody reroutes a perennial stream and how that changes the definition. But at least from intuitively, if it's perennial upstream and you read the very preamble to, I'll pull that up under the Rivers Act. It says, rivers begin at the point an intermittent stream becomes perennial, or at the point a perennial stream flows from a spring, pond, or lake. So we know that it's perennial upstream of the site. And then it says downstream of the first point of perennial flow, a stream normally remains a river except where interrupted by a lake or a pond. You'd be pretty hard to convince me that this isn't perennial unless you overcome the presumptions under the Rivers Act. And the simplest way to do that is to show that that area dries up for 4 times within the 12-month period during non-drought conditions. So, my interpretation of the regulations is you either treat this as a perennial stream and show that you meet the performance standards for it as part of the design work, or if you want to show that it's intermittent, you can do the field observations and document that and show that that's completely dry at least 4 days non-drought in a 12-month period. I will say, having been out in the field out there, it does diverge into 2 separate channels. One was flowing pretty good, one was dry, so it really depends on how much flow is going through there. But there is that continuous flow going all the way through there in sections. It's certainly running today.
So I understand where you're coming from, and I hope you can help me understand things a little bit better. What I was going by, and it's what also Mass DEP recommended, was looking at 310 CMR 10.582A1, and that B and C that I had read earlier. And when I talked to Bill Hannigan, he reiterated the same thing. And so that falls under definitions, critical characteristics, and boundaries. I understand that in other parts of the regulations, the way it's describing things, it sounds like the way you're describing it, but the way that the regulations read to me sound like it either is or isn't based on what this definition is and what Mass DEP wrote in their comments. So, do you have suggestions of, if you have a disagreement with how the regulations are written, like where do we go from here?
Yeah, ultimately, it's the commission's decision at this point. I've given you some suggestions on how you can overcome the presumption. Again, my take on it, and I don't know how the rest of the commission would feel, is that it is perennial. You're not going to convince me otherwise at this point unless you showed me that the stream, was dry for 4 days in the 12-month period. And that's a pretty easy thing to do if it's indeed an intermittent stream, particularly this time of year. This is the time of year you're typically going to see it dry. You get towards November and you're going to struggle to do that once it starts raining. So you can do that in the short term now. Also, the site's pretty well altered already. So quite possibly, if you look at your design, you may see that it meets or comes close to meeting the riverfront standards. That's one other thing that you could do. But it's in terms of the stream status, it's not the most black and white situation under the regs. I do agree with some of what you're saying. Obviously, you've looked at it, you've talked to people. But at the same time, I've been involved with perennial stream relocation projects. And because I've taken a stream, or I've not designed them, but I've permitted them. So because the stream's been relocated, all of a sudden now, it doesn't show up on the USGS here, but does that mean because it doesn't show up on the USGS now, it's no longer perennial? I have a hard time believing that that's the intent of the regulations. So as Mr. Giannakis was speaking earlier, it's perennial upstream, it's perennial downstream. Because it got relocated and it's now exists in the middle here, it's hard to argue that flow's not perennial. It's really tough to say, well, that's a losing stream at that point, but somehow it gains perennial capacity again in the future. So it is a little bit of a gray area, I think, in the regulations. But as a commissioner here, I'm going to take the conservative approach and look at it as though that's the intent of that regulation when I read that preamble under the rivers definitions, that's indeed a perennial stream.
One other thing I'm confused about is you said it diverted, and so the stream crossing, as we have in photographic evidence, has been there since 1947, and I assume that USGS map was probably done in 95. I don't know, it's in the
Or USGS map.
or it could have been the 60s.
Mr. Kareem actually sent me, I think he said it's 2018 was the flyover for this one. that shows that, you know, it connects down, and he even said that the stream had been moved at some point in history when Anthony, Teresa, and Eva were all built,
Right.
and they were developing, even when they were developing the lots you guys share a driveway with, the stream is noted there, so it was moved probably when those lots were made.
So why was there a bridge there since 1947?
I'm trying to find a picture
Oh,
of it.
I'm not sure, repeat that, please?
There's been a stream crossing since
Yeah.
like around 1947. We found slide, it's like a
1987.
slide that we reproduced, and it's
Stream crossing where?
right here.
Oh, okay.
The footings have been there, and they're old.
Sure, but that, I mean, you can have a stream crossing at a perennial or an intermittent stream, so I'm not sure what.
Well, you're saying it was rerouted.
Not at your
No,
location.
at that
but
location, that, it was rerouted down by Teresa Ave.
Then as development comes, you know, you can reroute something, rerouted and then connected with this intermittent is what it's saying. And now that it's perennial upstream, perennial
Okay.
downstream, the
Did-
flow is stronger.
Is there did you supply a copy of the USGS map with
Yeah.
the application?
In both applications, yes.
Can we-
Right here.
Does that show the whole area?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you picked up a lot.
Took that down 5 trees ago.
Jeez.
Yeah, that close back to your house. And you can see your
All
ghost
right,
behind
yeah,
trees.
you wanna come take a look? Sure. So, here's from Long Hill, I guess, here. You can kind of see the headwaters of this perennial stream system here. What it actually does now, when these roads were constructed, this is Teresa Avenue here, there's a cul-de-sac here, it no longer flows here. It flows up here. So it's perennial here, and it hits the back of the homes at Teresa Ave, flows north, flows under, and I still forget the name of this road, but flows under there into the streets MS4, and there's a culvert, and then it flows on to the Locust property in front of us tonight. So this is actually doing this, and then moving further downstream, connecting to Fall Brook here, which is perennial at this point. So you've got all of this perennial stream that's now been rerouted at some point in the past few decades. The state's coming from, but clearly that's not accurate either. So
Oh,
it's
this is
going.
Long Hill Drive right here, that was a development.
Yeah, so it's going, it's flowing up here, going underneath the road here, and then flowing out there. When I was talking about the stream diversion, I was talking specifically on this site where it breaks up out here between the two BBW lines. There's a point where it just splits and then it reconvenes into one stream downstream. Anybody else want to see this?
Yeah, I'd like to.
So there's a locus proposed, so if you look in the bottom right corner, you can, actually right by where it says 72, you'll see the perennial stream. And that was where it existed, but it's not doing that in the field today.
So you say this is where. I guess it used to be.
I don't want to take those from you, thank you.
Okay, so. So it's kind of there now. Isn't this one now?
This is how it flows now. This is your really copy an accurate picture. So right here is Eva Drive. Property is. Let it clear on. Right here. So you can see he's gonna go. So it's flowing this way. Teresa and Eva. Connects up here. This flows those. Then converges into different sections. One goes back across Pleasant Street.
It's going on, yeah. Yeah.
if it's not on this map, then sure. That's what we're talking about.
Was there a design flaw when that development went in? Should they retroactively try to, infiltrate some of that stuff?
Impossible to decide.
Yeah, well, I mean, to answer your question, you can't really force homeowners to retroactively do anything. Design flaws, well, historically, every community's faced, wetlands alterations that were either before the act or quite commonly too after the act on permitting. So, and knowing the age of the road and having a perennial stream there, something probably should have been done differently, but without having all the facts in front of us, who knows? You typically don't see a perennial stream, just disappear in a segment for a roadway without something hard and permitted in place, but it happens. But it clearly isn't doing what it's shown on the USGS right now.
Any other comments or questions, Mr. Stone? That's fine.
I'll set.
Thank you. Any other commission members have any comments? Questions? Anybody in the audience like to speak on this notice of intent? Second time? Final time. All right, we'll keep the public hearing open. What would we like the applicant to do, or just what would we like to see from them after all of this discussion?
Well, I hope I've been as clear as I could be. If you have any other questions, let me know. But I mean, the important part of it is, I think that bridge crossing, making sure we're on the correct vertical datum, and minimizing any work within the floodplain, and also showing that we're meeting any performance standards that are required there. And then the perennial stream question.
Right. What type of species did we see in the water over there again?
What's that?
We saw a species, I forget what it was, in the water.
Well, I mean, there were minnows in there,
Minnows,
but I mean,
yeah.
you can get that on an intermittent stream too. That's not.
That's what
I didn't see any clear environmental indicators one way or another that you had perennial intermittent there, but you've got to have pretty regular flow typically if you're going to see fish going up in the stream, but you can get that with intermittent streams too.
Do you have any questions for us? Do you know exactly what we're looking for at this point?
I have one quick thing.
Sure.
Just to have listed on the plan, the actual erosion control plan, but usually we just needed something indicating.
I believe it's on.
Is it on? You have it on, it's on,
Several other plans here.
okay, as long as it's on the.
It should be on the grading.
Yeah, it's on
Okay,
the grading.
okay.
This is the next thing.
I mean, if it's not, we just need it. That's all.
There's a detail as well, and there's documentation in that stormwater
Okay.
report too.
That was my only.
That's
comment.
it?
Yep.
Okay, good, very nice. That's it. I'm assuming either asking for a continuance. Our next meeting is on the 10th, which is in 6 days. Is that enough, or would you like to put it on there and we can continue it till the 24th? What would you like?
I'm having trouble understanding where to go just because the regulations, to me, are the regulations, so, is it okay for conservation to override what it is based on the regulations? Like, do I just say it's,
So I did speak to somebody
perennial
else
stream?
at DEP
Okay.
who also reiterated what Mr. Stone had stated. I guess it, it really is, it's kind of interpretation, but it's really on your burden to prove it.
Right.
That it is intermittent.
because on the comments it says, it's B or C. There isn't anything else.
So So if you
that
would
they
like
pointed
the
out.
commission to vote on it, you can request us to vote on it, and they can deny it, and then, you know,
I mean, what do you
Right,
guys think?
that's-
Can I just?
that takes a
Well,
lot. I think it'd be easier for you guys, to, you know, take the information that Mr. Stone has given you, kind of go back to the drawing board, and discuss it with yourself, with the, you know, the engineer, the wetland scientist, and prove that it's intermittent.
So if
But
I
it's not a
just
perennial
decide to
stream.
say it's perennial, do I have to have all those other documents updated? Because I don't think Karen is gonna be comfortable saying it's not an intermittent stream. So like I could just, you know, I'll just say it.
Well, let me ask you this, is he aware that that stream on the USGS map has been rerouted? Because,
He's reading the regulations.
He's not aware
Okay.
about it. I can have a conversation with him as well.
well, I would leave that up to the applicants, I mean, if they wanna talk to him, then it's their consultant.
So it's actually Bill's my consultant. So Bill hired.
Right. Because I'm not the least bit, I would not be the least bit surprised if everybody involved with this project up to this point was completely oblivious to the fact that there's been a rerouted stream at some point there. That's not something you're running to every day. You know, it's simply, when we get applications, we try to do our due diligence and look at things, and sometimes when we see it in the field, you know, my first thought seeing that in the field, this looks more than what I would typically see on an intermittent stream, and then seeing that there's a zone A with a VFE associated with it, that immediately got me thinking there was more to it. Let's look at the perennial. At that point, I was driving through the neighborhood and seeing how things actually looked. Now you can pull it up on GIS, you can look at different GIS sites and actually see that stream and see how it runs in a completely different direction now than what the USGS map showed.
I'll bring it up to him and I'll,
Okay.
you know, we can change it, can, but if not, I can't do anything about it.
All right, well, we will continue it to the September 10th meeting, and if you're not ready, just email Angela, and we'll push it off, continue it to the 24th.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want the copy?
I have 3 copies of it, thank you.
I think Paul moved the stream.
Can I have another copy? It really it's dinner.
All
I've
right.
eaten like 9 Starburst just because I'm hungry.
We have 1 certificate of compliance.
Yes.
Berkshire Lot 2, DP 199522.
Yes. So this is another older file which we've been dealing with quite frequently. The order of conditions is back from 96. So they have here. It was when they commenced work. It was June 17th, 1996. It's by 35 Berkshire for the commissioners who have been out there. It's that house at the end. And basically, one of the lots, there was 2 lots that were built. One lot received a certificate of compliance, and the other lot did not. It wasn't filed and it wasn't recorded whether or not it was applied for. It's very difficult for us to see because we don't have all the files due to all the conservation office moves. But I don't have anything in my file or in the file here for this lot. So Jamie Rowe requested a certificate of compliance. Due to the age of the order of conditions, back in the order of conditions, they did not require an as-built to receive a certificate of compliance, so he did not submit one. I did do a site visit with Jamie, and we did discover, he did inform me that there is a catch basin that kind of catches right in the driveway that leads out to the stream area. Not the stream area, but it leads out to the wetland area where towards the back of the lot, and then also it looks like the land areas were disturbed and kind of squared out more than what was on the original plans. I have the original plans here if anyone would like to see them. I can lay them down up front.
I'd like to see a copy. That catch basin wasn't on the plan?
No, I believe, I'm not sure when it was added, but it's a very small, kind of at the corner of the garage, just kind of catching rainwater, and here's
So they're actually got a catch basin that
Yeah, right in the garage kind of looks like it's catching roof runoff, and then there's a white pipe that goes out to the wetland area, which I believe is shown in here.
Which lot is it?
This one is lot 2. So right.
So it's at the corner of the Shadow Lane and Berkshire, is that what we're talking about? What's the address? 11.
So the road goes down like this, and so like over here is where we have the enforcement, 35 Berkshire, so this is the house here. So the catch basin is about right here, and the pipe leads out this way into the wetland area. It's a PVC pipe. Unsure of when that was put in. And then back here looks like, you know, the edge of work was supposed to stop here, and they just kind of flattened out the yard a little more closer to the wetlands. There's not really, it's all vegetated, there's not really any damage to the wetland area. But it just looks like over the years, people kind of mowed a little farther every year. No, I didn't get no spicy ones. The order of conditions right here. Just gonna take this and use it.
What's the date on the notifications?
Oh, that's my, that's my little name.
Oh, that's the date of the order. So,
Angela, did you go through the order,
Yes.
and did they meet all the requirements in the?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, the only thing that was kind of, technically is concerning was the pipe that's going out to the wetland and the expansion of the backyard. It does happen.
That's not, it's not on the,
No, they kind of had like a limit of work on the plans.
is this wall in place?
Stone wall is not in place. So that was never put in. So this kind of went out. It was supposed to be kind of squared away, and this kind of went out a little farther. So I don't know if we did that. That's where the wetland is. So basically, they went right up to the edge of the wetlands. There was some tree barriers, but
In terms of the limit of work, I mean, the commission could ask for an as-built if they wanted to. And I'm not sure I'm there yet, but one thing we could do to check it is to see if we've got the foundation plan from the building department.
I did request that from them. They haven't aligned it yet. They don't have it. They don't keep any files in their office. They go to the basement to see.
Okay.
Past a certain.
So it's an archive
Yeah,
issue.
so it's an archive and manpower issue, woman power issue. Yes.
Okay. Well, you can always. The house recently transferred. Is that what's triggering this?
I believe, which we were supposed to close August 21st, but then they came up with the fact that the order of conditions was never signed. But when I had sold this to the buyer 12 years ago, the attorney who was doing the closing didn't pick it up. So she was supposed to be here tonight. She should have picked it up 12 years ago and gone through this then. So now the attorney that's handling the closing, they're picking it up, and this is why we're here. So yes, we are hoping for a transfer.
Sometimes what happens, I spoke to one of my friends who is a closing attorney, is that sometimes these things will pop up, but unfortunately, if they're not being paid to look for these things, they don't look for them. They don't pay for them, if you're not paying for a title search, you don't get a title search. So it happens quite often in real estate, so I
Get what you pay for. Yeah.
Stay on the project 96.
That's when the work began, 96, sorry.
You old enough to drive that?
I was 4. You're welcome.
I was 4.
So the only thing that's not, so we have a pipe and it leads from what to the wetland?
Basically from the driveway, it looks like a catch. Just
Oh, that catch basin.
Yeah, because the driveway slopes down towards the house, so it looks like, it was put in to prevent flooding.
Okay.
It looks like there's a gutter that leads into it as well, and it goes out to the wetland area.
What's the street address again?
11 Berkshire.
I looked on the satellite, it's not the same thing, so it's all wooded and treed. Does the pipe lead directly through the wetland, or is it stop short of the wetland?
There wasn't any wetlands flagged, so it looks like it leads directly into it.
Right
yes.
into
It's, yeah, it looks like it's into it.
I didn't take the soil samples, there's a lot of bees.
Oh, come on. So what, now you're allergic to bees? Come on, Andy.
But I got stung by a bee in the first day of school, and on Tuesday I got stung by a bee in the face. 1 week apart, so I'm not messing with bees.
You know, miss, come on.
He's not allergic, is he?
Well, we found out he's not.
Jeez, that's scary though.
With the bee helmet with the mask. You are.
Yeah, that's true. The first one they would have.
Not a wetlands vegetation expert, but what's their vegetation plan?
Maple.
Well, I know that.
They do.
It looks like that stuff culture. I see the old.
Those damp leaves too, you can see there's a organic.
Those animals trying to get over that Jersey barrier right here.
Do you Google Earth on it, Brad?
Well, no, GIS.
Oh. Thoughts, concerns?
How confident are you that the resource area hasn't been altered?
I'm very confident when you're out there looking, it looks clean. The only area that has been altered is where we already have an enforcement area, and that's off this lot. And that's just from the erosion issue with Mr. Gliminox's property at 35, where it keeps eroding in, they keep putting jute matting in, and then it keeps getting uprooted.
But the resource area.
Yeah, on this
is
property
fine.
is, clean as a wetland is, and even the areas, I walked the areas that they, it was expanded into, it wasn't mushy, it wasn't damp there, there was no moss, no vegetation other than lawn, there was no trash or debris, no silt, no sedimentation, everything was stable.
What's the address number again?
11 Berkshire.
11?
Any evidence of any petroleum from that outlet? Okay.
I didn't see any.
I know it's
And
hard
it
to see,
was
but-
raining earlier that day that I was out there, so.
Okay.
I'd never like to see catch basins right outside the garage.
Well,
They're just as bad as a floor drain in the garage.
right. That's why I asked.
But I can, looking at the design plan, I can see why it was installed probably after the fact, because
I think
there was
close that
there was
way.
no attention to the grading of that driveway there. Everything was directed right there, so. It was gonna be a problem from the beginning.
Shadow Lane Drive, Shadow Lane Drive.
Yes, I'll pass it around.
I don't think this is much use.
No, I really should.
It's lot 2, right?
Yes.
This one.
And the pipes to the right over here, the south. See, somebody drew on this. So.
That wasn't me, that was probably back in the 90s, if I may.
Carbon date that.
Carbon date.
So here's the driveway, catch basin's out here, and it kind of shoots out here, then here's where the pipe relates. And it's, you know, a small little circular,
Yeah, look like a pretty small pipe.
I say catch basin, and we all think the 24, you know,
Yeah, no,
but
I
it's
know what you're
not.
talking about, the little driveway.
I feel like it
one,
would be-
yeah.
And is that the driveway right on the bend of the road? It looks like there's a car parked right there. Is that all asphalt?
Yes, that's all asphalt, and it's as you can see in the plan, it's a pretty steep drive, it's kind of all, shoots everything down here, and this is lower,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be a problem.
It's gonna pool right there.
But having it directly discharge into, usually you have a daylight.
Well, that's why I asked the question, does it daylight directly hit it?
So the catch basin's gonna be out here somewhere. And you're just looking at the grade and everything came right to that point. And it shows, I mean, that's what the design shows, that it should have been
There's a
addressed.
puddle right there.
Yeah,
Should have
that's
been
where it
addressed
is.
the design, and the design didn't, so.
Except for it hugs the house, they might put a gutter right there. Yeah, it's
Ties it
really, yeah, it doesn't connect directly, but it directly flows that way because of the divots in the driveway.
What is this? That's-
Camera's not gonna see that.
All right, so what would you like to do? Commission members,
I'm okay with sure.
any issues? Are we good? We good?
Sorry, we were talking about servers.
All
But
right,
yes, I'm fine with that.
okay. Do I have a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for Berkshire Lot 2 DEP 199522?
Yes, I will make the motion that we issue the certificate of compliance for Berkshire Lot 2, DEP number 199-522.
Do I have a second on that? All in favor? Thank you, ma'am. You're all set?
Thank you. So, will you send that in, or?
Yep, so I send it to whoever, I forget who was the property, usually I can send you a copy as well if you wanna leave your email, I can scan it and send it to you as well. Do I have your email already?
I was one of the ones who was CC.
I mean, there was a lot of
I know.
people who were calling me about this property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Our next meeting is September 10th, which is in 6 days from now. We've already met the deadline. If there's nothing else to discuss, anything? All right, I declare the meeting adjourned.